Welcome back to The Five Inside of me, Joe Thomlinson. Today I'm joined by the one, the only, David Ornstein. David, how are you?
Good. Pleased to be back here in our favourite spot.
Yeah, the floral wall's back out.
The floral wall is back, and so are we. So yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got loads to discuss today. We're going to be starting by talking about the Manchester United takeover. Now, as we shoot this, it's 12:30 on Wednesday, so the bids haven't officially been locked in or announced yet, but we know there's a deadline tonight, 9 o'clock, don't we?
Yeah, 9 o'clock UK is the latest sort of cut-off, which I think is more of a soft deadline in terms of the fact that we don't know how this process is going to unfold thereafter. There may be more rounds of bidding. There could be entrants from left field who haven't previously been disclosed. It does seem that there are more groups in the contest than has become publicly clear, because we've only really heard from Sheikh Jassim's camp and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's too. But when you look at reports and speak to people around the situation, they say originally it was 20, it's now down to 10. Others suggest there are 8 sort of parties in the mix. Yeah. Some of them for full takeovers, some of them for partial investment, some of them to maybe help finance any potential deal, or indeed the Glazers staying. And I think there's one fundamental point in this. Will the Glazers get what they're looking for to sell? The common consensus is that they're looking for at least £6 billion. The first round of indicative offers were said to be around £4.5 billion. There are reports coming all the time saying that the bidding parties are getting up towards £6 billion and they're going to blow the Glazers out the water. And I've spoken to people who do think this is going to go through and that it is serious, and eventually they will get there. But these are really critical moments in that process. And let's see how it develops in the days, and I would say weeks ahead, because these aren't easy or quick processes. And so, I think there's a bit of patience required.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at, some of the names being linked over the last few days, and we spoke about it then. The kind of number of parties involved seems to be set at about 8, doesn't it, at the moment? But there are 2 very clear standouts, Sheikh Jassim and, of course, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And, Manchester United fans at home will be thinking, and quite split, I would say, online and in the stadium, will be thinking one offers 100% of a buyout and one is at 69% of a buyout. What is the difference between those 2 bids? Because on the surface, they seem like different levels. Yeah,
I think there's a little bit of a misconception here. So Sheikh Jassim's camp have been very clear from the start.
Very public.
That they want and intend to take 100% of the club. But the reality is you can take 69% from the Glazers if you buy them out, and thereafter there are other shareholders that you can make offers for. You can buy their shares over time. Okay. And that could take quite a few months to come to fruition. It's not necessarily an instant transaction. And so on the other hand, you've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe sort of saying that we're going to take the 69%, and maybe in the future we'll address the rest of the shares. But essentially they're both vying for control of the club. That's the immediate priority. The difference is, at least from a public perspective, that Sheikh Jassim's camp have said we're going to wipe Man United's debt completely.
Which is huge for United fans.
Which is a big thing publicly. Yeah. And certainly from a PR perspective, because that's been a serious, probably the biggest bone of contention during the Glazers' reign at Manchester United. And then on top of that, they're pledging to invest in infrastructure, the stadium, the training ground, and that is of pressing need as well. So Jim Ratcliffe's group are saying we may need some borrowing for this, and so we will take that on ourselves, on Ineos, and not on Manchester United. So in theory, that would be okay from Manchester United's perspective, because it's very different from what the Glazers have done. And there's one unknown quantity in this. Could Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos partner together with some of these other groups that may be silent at the moment, but maybe more serious than we seem to know so far, and come up with a really compelling rival to the Qatari bid, which has, been so well documented, and we know the resources available to Qatar, in theory, could make them the strongest candidate in this. But we don't know that for a fact. We also know that or it's been suggested that the Qatari bid will perhaps face some more difficult challenges if they go forward, in terms of this notion that it's essentially a state buyout of a club, which would put them in the realms of, say, a Newcastle, a Manchester City, a Paris Saint-Germain. And how would the other Premier League clubs look upon that? How would the Premier League look upon that? The owners and directors test, all that sort of stuff. That's not the same with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos buyout. There's questions about conflicts of interest, about playing in the same European competitions, lack of clarity around all of that. And one point that is definitely worth mentioning that will have to come out in the coming sort of weeks and months is the sporting expertise too. So the Qatari bid and Sheikh Jassim's don't appear to have that right now. They've got experience from PSG, if you want to suggest that there's some linkage there, certainly from a nationality point of view, but they're saying that this is completely separate to that, and they don't have prior sporting investments, whereas Sir Jim Ratcliffe has shown at Nice and Lausanne and in Team Sky, turned into Ineos and elsewhere, that they've been there, done that. They've got Jean-Claude Blanc on board, who was previously at Paris Saint-Germain and has worked in football for a long time. So there are all these different elements that appear to show that they are proper rivals for this. Whether there are more in that equation or not, let's see in the days ahead.
It is a huge summer for Manchester United as well. There's lots of areas to address. I mean, what's happening in the background at Manchester United while all this is taking place? Are they still planning for transfer targets come the summer? If new owners are going to come in and potentially rip that up and say, we want this person in place, how do they plan for, let's say, a Harry Kane arrival or an Osimhen transfer target? How do they do that?
First thing to say is that, and we haven't mentioned it yet, that there was this public parading of groups in terms of
shaking hands outside of Old Trafford with Jim Ratcliffe and Richard Arnold.
So Sheikh Jassim's group were photographed. That didn't look as pre-planned as what happened 24 hours later when Sir Jim Ratcliffe's group were front and centre, rolled out the red carpet.
It was very public, that, wasn't it, Richard Arnold?
I don't know if that was to balance things up because the Qatari group had come the day before and been snapped by the newspapers. But the point to mention there is that within those meetings, there were presentations from Manchester United staff, including, I think, Richard Arnold, John Murtagh, the football director. And that's where they would have touched upon recruitment and their plans, how they operate. I've got to say, these presentations take place year-round for investors and sponsors. It wouldn't have been that new for Manchester United staff in finance, in commercial, to be presenting to people and showing how they operate. Of course, the context of this is a little bit different. And that leads us on to recruitment. I'm not saying they would have laid out their plans for signing Harry Kane and Osimhen, but more procedurally and structurally. And it is vital to say this was not a negotiation for the sale of Manchester United. It was a meet and greet. It was show how we do things, almost like a prospectus when you're selling a house.
Of course.
And they would have listened. They would have asked some questions back. You hear that the meetings went well. Of course, the PR people around these situations are going to say the meetings went well and it was all cordial, but we don't really know who's the front runner, to be precise. What they'll be doing is formulating their plans, assessing what money they will have to play with under the current ownership. And those plans are always worked on. They focus their transfer activity on the summer. They will do stuff in January if opportunities arise, but that's normally only opportunistic or in reaction to an emergency situation like a bad injury, such as that. And so, the striker department is the priority for Manchester United as far as we know. And that's where I would expect a significant amount of finance to go. Manchester United do have a shortlist, as far as I know, for the striking position. Harry Kane, it's a complicated situation, mainly because Tottenham don't want to lose him. And at this point, they're not even contemplating his sale. Their full focus is on renewing his contract, even if that goes into next season. You actually saw with Christian Eriksen, they sold him in the January, Tottenham, for a decent fee of his final year of contract. So there is a bit of precedent there. And even if they lose him for free in the summer of 2024 as a 31-year-old Kane, if they don't get sufficient offers in the summer of 2023, they may feel that was a price worth paying.
What do you think a sufficient offer would be for Harry Kane for Tottenham? Are we talking, hundreds of millions, 100 million plus probably?
Definitely. Daniel Levy will want the highest possible price, and there was a report in the Times ahead of us recording this that they want at least 100 million in a lump sum.
Yeah,
as like an initial, but that isn't the final price. That would be almost like the initial outlay. Maybe there would be.
So we're potentially talking British record transfer here, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. And you will speak to people at Tottenham who will hypothetically say way higher than that. Crazy numbers to even consider it with just a year to go. And that's their stance at the moment. But let's see when we get to the summer how Harry Kane feels, how Tottenham's push for the top 4 goes, whether he agitates for a move or not, whether Tottenham decide actually we want to cash in, and who's there at the table.
I mean, while we're discussing Harry Kane very briefly, let's touch upon Tottenham Hotspur and his future. Is that in any way aligned to the future of Antonio Conte? Because as we record this, again, we said it earlier, 10-1 now. Antonio Conte is still in charge of Tottenham Hotspur. Do you think that's going to last? Are we going to see Ryan Mason given that role? Where are we with Antonio Conte?
Well, the first question you asked is, does Harry Kane's future relate to Antonio Conte's? I don't believe so. Antonio Conte could be gone any minute. He could be gone, if not now, then definitely at the end of the season, the way things are shaping up. There is an option to extend his contract by 12 months. Firstly, I don't think that will be taken. Secondly, if it was that they were going to carry on, I don't think they would do it via a 12-month extension. If everybody was happy to continue with somebody of Antonio Conte's caliber, you renegotiate a 2 or 3 year contract afresh. And for both of those reasons, I think that's completely unrelated to Harry Kane. I think his decision on whether he wants to stay or go this summer of 2024, will be based on where he sees Tottenham's ambition lying, their competitiveness for major honours, the vision of the club, and many other factors besides. And I think at this point in Harry Kane's life and his career and the way things have gone with Antonio Conte, there doesn't appear to be a link from what I can see in Conte's future. As for Conte himself, at the moment we're recording this, there's still been no serious conversations between Tottenham and Antonio Conte, who is back in Italy, on what's going to happen here. There have been reports that he's expected to leave Tottenham this week. Right now, he's still in position, and I wouldn't expect him to return to the club's Enfield training base this week because of the international break. Very few players around. Ryan Mason has been taking some training sessions, and so that gives a little bit of breathing space Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for some conversations to take place and a decision to be made. Does Antonio Conte want to continue? Certainly his comments after the Southampton match didn't suggest so. Does Daniel Levy want him to continue and try and lead Tottenham's bid for a top 4 finish? Does somebody else stand a better chance of getting it than him?
I mean, we talk about those names that are being linked. We've seen Pochettino heavily linked, haven't we? We've seen Oliver Glasner linked in some corners of the media as well. It was a really difficult last time out for Tottenham prior to Antonio Conte appointment. There was a lot of rejections before it got to Nuno, it felt like. Have they got a name in mind already, do you think, Tottenham, behind the scenes?
It was a mess last time.
It was.
Or certainly that's how it came across to the public. I remember us reporting on Pochettino at one point. Then Conte came into the frame, and then Gattuso came into the frame, but some of his comments that he had made in Italy caused uproar, and Tottenham veered away from that, and eventually Espirito Santo for his short-lived reign. They can't afford a repeat of that. And it's why Daniel Levy in his head and people around him, Fabio Paratici in his head and people around him will be bringing together lists of options. There have been suggestions that Luis Enrique, the former Barcelona and Spain manager, is Fabio Paratici's first choice. I don't know how accurate that is, but I also do know that any major club will be considering a manager of that caliber who is also available. And he did a historic job at Barcelona. It didn't go
treble winner
so well with Spain. And then you look at the likes of Pochettino. Clearly, that's going to keep bubbling away in the conversation because, he's based here, he's available, he's got the Tottenham background, he's clearly still got a close bond with some of the players there. But do you turn back if you're Daniel Levy? Do you turn back if you're Maurizio Pochettino? And he will also have other offers as well. The Real Madrid job may come up, for example, and you would expect him to be in the frame for something like that. How long do you wait to make this return to management before the biggest jobs start passing you by? So lots of questions for Maurizio Pochettino, but there have also been a number of noises that it's not something that Fabio Paratici wants, and could they work together with always Pochettino wanting a lot of power?
The director of football issue was there before, wasn't it?
Exactly, and now the power base that Fabio Paratici has built, would they be able to work together? Will Fabio Paratici be there himself, as you ask? And then you go beyond that. There have been names like Roberto De Zerbi. Ruben Amorim has done a fantastic job
amazing.
At Sporting Club of Portugal. You've got Thomas Tuchel who's available. Now, there may be ideas to try and get something now if it's available, but can you manage to complete that in this sort of environment? And in the meantime, we saw Ryan Mason do a capable job in the past. He's very popular at Tottenham, and there are people within the game that would like to see him get his opportunity. There will be questions. Does his potential translate into being able to manage Tottenham at this level on a permanent basis? Does he have the staff around him? Can you build a sufficient staff to manage a club at this level and the egos of the dressing room? I'm really liking what I've seen of Ryan Mason and what I've heard, but that will be a big decision for them to make. So I'm not giving you an answer on a firm candidate, but one, whether it's at Tottenham or elsewhere, that I would like to see get his opportunity in the Premier League is Luis Enrique. And then on top of that, I'm massively intrigued by and impressed with Ruben Amorim.
Okay, so Tottenham fans, keep your eyes out for that. Finally, I just wanted to touch on your Monday column, of course. There was some blockbuster news about Jude Bellingham, or at least it hit the Twitter space in a blockbuster fashion, didn't it? And his potential or unlikely potential arrival now at Liverpool. Liverpool fans at home, I'm sure, will be, what's going on with Jude Bellingham? But we now see Man City and Real Madrid as potential front runners in this move.
Well, it's good to have a proper opportunity to explain it, because when you're dealing with the reaction on social media, it's often quite binary, black or white. We're either signing someone or we're not. Celebration or commiseration. The Jude Bellingham situation has been well documented for a long time, in the fact that pretty much every major club in world football would love to sign Jude Bellingham. In more recent months, maybe even years to be honest, Liverpool have been extremely heavily linked with him. He's a player that clearly Jurgen Klopp and the club adore, and the fan base too, with total justification. And then lately, sort of Real Madrid and Man City have come to the fore to present to the outside world like it's a bit of a three-way battle. There's a bit of unknown around Manchester United, for example, if their takeover was to allow them even more financial resource. Is it a player that they would go for? But with that focus that we talked about being on the striker and still needing to comply with financial fair play, I wouldn't put them in the same bracket right now. Chelsea obviously would have been in that bracket. Whether Jude Bellingham would have wanted to go there or not, we don't know. But I think by signing Enzo Fernandez, their need to bring in Jude Bellingham is a bit less pressing. And that's where I'm going to pick up the answer, because a lot of people, since we published that on The Athletic, have said, what's the news here? How has it changed? Liverpool would have always known it was going to be really expensive. Why are financial considerations more of a concern now than they were before? Well, let's pick up on that. Enzo Fernandez signing for Chelsea for 121 million euros in pretty much the same position, with a lower level of experience than Jude Bellingham in terms of appearances in Europe.
Quite a long way as well.
Quite a long way, even though he has won the World Cup with Argentina. Skews the market. The supply and demand for those top level number 6, number 8s do not marry at the moment. There is much more demand from the top clubs than there is supply. So that would always push the price up. and the Enzo Fernandez signing will do that even more. It puts Borussia Dortmund in a really strong position. They already had him under contract until 2025. There's no release clause to our knowledge in there. They would very happily give him a new deal, and he appears to be happy there. He's just 19 years old. And so whoever's going to prize him away from the Bundesliga are going to have to pay a hefty amount of money. On The Athletic, we reported a while ago that Dortmund want around 150 million euros. There's always been this notion 120 will do it. We don't actually know because there's no firm price, and the process is not yet at a stage where clubs are in detailed negotiations with Borussia Dortmund. Maybe there have been some conversations, maybe there have been some dialogue with Jude Bellingham's camp, which is run by his father, and his parents have excellently mapped out his career so far. So my information is that as things stand, Liverpool's pursuit or chances of signing him this summer are looking increasingly unlikely because of the finances it would involve, for the reasons explained, and also because of the financial power of their rivals for him. Manchester City are really keen on Jude Bellingham. It looks like Ilkay Gundogan may leave. They're always looking for top-level players.
Yeah.
Bellingham and Haaland have played together before. Real Madrid are sort of regenerating their midfield, whether Kroos and Modric end up leaving this summer or in the future. They've already bought in Tchouaméni. They've got Camavinga, who they're starting talks with over a new contract. And if Real Madrid want a player, they normally get them. The same questions apply. Will they go to the level it's required? I think for Liverpool, it will come down to the budget. I guess it will with everybody. And that's what we're yet to understand. RFSG, Fenway Sports Group, Liverpool's owners, prepared to go where they've never been anywhere near before, if it's, say, 150 million euros, because that would maybe double their transfer record for one player. And Liverpool are working on a number of scenarios for a number of different positions with a number of different options.
And they probably need more than one midfielder, don't they?
Yeah, and so that will be a huge question for them. Do we just focus on Jude Bellingham and throw all the resources at him? Or can we find a scenario where we go for him and we take on other players? Or do we just focus on other players? And you're seeing the likes of Mason Mount linked, Matheus Nunes linked. I don't want to give off the impression that Liverpool's pursuit of Jude Bellingham is over. To the contrary, and we were clear on that in our report, their admiration could not be stronger. They'll want to sign him, and no firm decisions have been made. So what we're actually reporting at this moment in time is that not so much there are favourites for Jude Bellingham, because I genuinely think this race is open, but more that there are a couple of clubs that are in slightly stronger positions right now.
Right, okay.
And that could change, and it will depend on multiple factors. But at that moment that we're reporting, we relay our information that's properly sourced, like with every story, with no bias or preference of where the player goes, other than he goes on to have a really good career and he's shown the respect he deserves and he's given the time and patience, which I appreciate. The scrutiny and reporting from people like me probably doesn't help. But I've got to say, he's taken to this scene like a duck to water.
Yeah.
He's excelling. He doesn't seem to be phased physically, mentally, intellectually, tactically, technically. He's an absolute prime specimen for club and country. He's only going in one direction. And wherever he ends up, I guess we should all wish him only the best and total support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he could win his first Bundesliga title this season. Of course, Borussia Dortmund flying at the moment. So keep your eyes out, of course, to David Ornstein's stuff on The Athletic and his social media for all the updates on Jude Bellingham's future. I know Liverpool fans at home will be watching this. Manchester United for the takeover as well. Thanks very much, David, for joining me today. Thanks very much for you guys at home watching as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the 5 YouTube channel. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you later.